I was 16 years old when on FM radio I heard 3 songs in a row that totally captivated me. These were the first 3 songs on the flip side of the Moody Blues album entitled To Our Children's Children's Children. I was on fire in response. My deepest longings were ignited. It was, in some sense, a religious experience. It was more real and vital to me than anything else. And nothing has changed. Years later, if I play Gypsy, Eternity Road, Candle of Life from that album, that Moody Blues album, I'm transported into a transcendent realm of meaning and beauty. There was a taste for the infinite that was awakened in me as a 16-year-old, a deep desire for eternity. It was a taste and feel for a level of spiritual experience that went far beyond anything that I'd known, like in my local church or anywhere else for that matter. Years later, when I was studying at the Master Yoga Academy in La Jolla, California, a teacher described human beings as possessing an innate yearning for transcendence, and I could so identify with that. It had the effect of reinforcing my deepening sense that we were made for transcendence. We were built for something more than the here and now. My conviction was then being confirmed that this world is not all there is. There's another world, another realm that is always calling to us. I'd like now to describe here in this video that experience at the age of 16 as a kind of awakening to intelligence, in particular to what's been described as like a higher region of intelligence called higher mind. When this level of mind is awakened within you, according to the Irish philosopher-poet John O'Donoghue, the search begins and you can never go back. The search begins and you can never go back. You are inflamed with a special longing that will never again let you linger in the lowlands of complacency and partial fulfillment. I would also like to suggest here in this video that there's another way of describing this opening to intelligence, and I'm going to describe it as also like an awakening to faith. I'm proposing that in a certain sense, intelligence and faith are the same kind of thing. To be intelligent, in other words, is to be in a state of faith. To be intelligent is to be in a state of faith. According then to this understanding, faith, as the awakening of intelligence, is an upsurge of spiritual desire. It's a flashing forth of Shakti, or spiritual energy. Now, it's just this kind of understanding of intelligence, faith, that motivated Soren Kierkegaard in his fragments, and he was at pains to describe this, to articulate it, and to inspire. He asked the question, how does the learner come to realize an understanding? How do you reach an understanding? For Kierkegaard, understanding is enabled through what he called a leap into faith, a leap into experience in quest of truth. Now, to describe the awakening of intelligence, faith in this way has less to do with like the faith, i.e. like the content of a particular faith, but rather has to do with faith itself, which I'm describing here as an almost irresistible energy that awakens, wells up from deep inside of you. How easy it appears to be to bypass this dynamic dimension of faith intelligence and instead to fall into merely saying, I have faith, which can be so empty and hollow. So it was against this sort of depthless level of faith that Kierkegaard in Denmark launched his protests. Like Kierkegaard went to war against all cosmetic expressions of faith. His insight was like Carl Jung's, who describes some believers as having God on the outside and nothing within. Faith then, in Kierkegaard's understanding, is a dynamic and powerful force. It is a leap and a risk. A real faith, then, in the language of Kierkegaard, is the radical opening of oneself to the conversion experience. Real faith involves an awakening from complacency into a new poignant consciousness. Now, There are many educators today whose conviction it is that faith should have nothing to do with education. The one thing, says Professor Thomas Burtonow, that modern educators, including modern college and university educators, know best is that faith has no place in education. I've got a question. What happens then in a school where faith has no place? Are you going to throw out all the sages of wisdom who were men of faith? Like, for example, someone like a Krishnamurti, who sounds actually just like Kierkegaard when he describes the awakening of intelligence. Listen to Krishnamurti. An intelligent mind, he says, which he's describing as an awakened mind, an intelligent mind is a mind which is not satisfied with explanations, with conclusions, but is an inquiring mind, like an active mind, a mind that is watching, learning, studying. Such an inspired mind is, he says, willing to rebel, to go against the whole social structure in order to find what God is, or to discover the truth of anything. Like, modern educators want to throw out this person of wisdom who emphasized faith, intelligence, and this way. There's no place in education for a Krishnamurti or for a Soren Kierkegaard, whose conviction it was that we have a spark of heavenly nature within us that needs to be set on fire. Is there no place in education for men of faith like a Krishnamurti or a Kierkegaard who think that human beings are destined for union with God? Faith has no place in education? Well, hey, ominously, it was George Orwell who envisioned in his book 1984 what a society would look like that had dispensed with faith. Orwell foresaw a society of smoothed out human beings whose robotic members behaved as in a collectivistic herd. All are politically and socially correct and are without intelligence, and they're without faith. Well, Orwell's vision has been almost completely fulfilled, and it wasn't even forced upon us. I'd like to give you an example of someone who in fairly recent years had experienced this awakening of intelligence, and it was a man named Martin Lings, a Sufi master, who had been a student of C.S. Lewis. And he heard C.S. Lewis give a talk on the medieval understanding of the human soul and its faculties. And I think you'll see a direct parallel to what I've been saying with Lewis's emphasis on the faculties of the soul. I can see him and hear him now, said Lings. Lewis described the faculties of the soul as arranged in a hierarchy. And the highest faculty of the soul is called in Latin intellectus, which can be translated as intellectual intuition. Well, intellectus, the highest level of the soul, is that region of intelligence that I've been focusing on in this video. Well, in his lecture, C.S. Lewis stressed that the intellect, at its highest level, is not for things of this world. Prior to its awakening, this capacity for spiritual realization lies dormant in the soul, covered over by worldly preoccupations and concerns. This capacity, which resides at the center of the human being, is therefore darkened, but it can be awakened through purification practices. And when that capacity is aroused, will you begin to see what Dante and Beatrice beheld? Faith has been awakened, intelligence has been awakened. And upon hearing this, hearing from C.S. Lewis about the faculties of the soul and about the highest region of the soul, intellectus, Martin Lings says, "This was for me like a flash of lightning, for I had never heard of the intellect in its true meaning." Usually I think the intellect is thought of as, we say someone, oh, he has a great intellect, he's clever, he's smart, or he's quick of mind. We're talking about something much deeper than those ordinary ways of saying what the intellect is. We're talking about a much higher level. It was something wonderful, says Martin Lings, and in a sense, I never recovered. That's how powerful it was. Now, in response to this awakening of intelligence, to quote John O'Donohue again, the eternal, the sense of the eternal that awakens, makes you urgent. You are then loath to let compromise or threat of danger hold you back from striving towards the summit of fulfillment. You are never the same again.